do this for us alone. It's a collective effort. We all need to be engaged to achieve this. And this is what we're going to be talking about. And as Johannes introduced me, I'm Yvette Ishimwe from Rwanda, from the business and entrepreneurship track. And I'm with my colleague, Babatunde. I'm going to be moderating this panel. And, we want it to be as more engaging as possible. And I'll let Babatunde take over.
All right. I almost thought you were going to say the surname as well, but you skipped that one. Hello, everyone. Good morning again. It's a huge pleasure to be here. My name is Babatunde Okunlola. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a journalist, and basically from the civic engagement class as well. And as introduced by my colleague here, Yvette, let me say it feels so good to be seated here, to get a seat at the table with this amazing woman. Thank you very much. And so let me also say that if all we did today was put up a picture of two of you, like just put up one here of the two of you, that would be a lesson in itself. You will success well, and thank you for doing what you do and for being that picture of hope and for women leadership in itself. A round of applause for them again, please. All right, so just very quickly again, like my colleague here said, we'll be having a question and answer segment with them. Some of the questions we've got were, of course, done with consultation with some of you. We've gotten some of your questions, but if you still have more, you can simply write them on a paper and then, pass them, of course, through Joanna, and then she'll pass them across to us. So let's get started.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be sitting with these powerful women. And by the way, for me, I was really inspired by both of you, hearing about your journeys, your stories. And, we can relate. Personally, I can relate to what you were saying. And, it's really empowered us, and me in particular. And I have one question for both of you. There have been several conversations going on about what governments have to do for women empowerment, what private sector should do. But I'm curious to know what you think about actually what women should do for other women to achieve this. What are we supposed to do to really achieve women's empowerment and women's leadership to make it a success? Hassan, I can take it.
Thank you so much. This is one of the most important questions, I think. One thing that we notice, not only in Africa, but in Europe and in America, is that when in general women have power, I try to ask them, when you are in leadership position, how did you become this leader? And often you hear somebody help me in the discussion. I say, okay, if you find this door closed and somebody opens it for you, are you going to close it back, or are you going to open it so wide that you bring people of your own kind to get in? When Dr. Michelle was talking, one thing that he said, you should not be proud of being the only one. When you start telling me you are the only one and you are in charge, I become so worried and anxious. Because in order for you to be there, somebody has helped you by opening the door. And I think women supporting women is so critical in advancing the cause of women, period. But often you find circumstances where the very people that you're trying to pull up will pull you down. You have to be careful. And why is happening that way? Because we have been socialized really in patriarchy. And in patriarchy, only men can lead. And sometimes we develop the characteristic of men leaders instead of characteristic of women leaders, which is nurturing, and which is building solidarity, which is really looking at how to get more women come and join us. And I think also to address the cause of women, one thing that, again, my colleague said, we should not be only women looking for the advancement of the women. you have to find feminist men that you build solidarity with. Because there is no, one thing that I like with regard to how African American women look at the struggle is that they understand how the system undermines men and sometimes promote women, but by undermining men so much, it disrupts the family structure, it disrupts the community structure. So how do we understand the institutional and the structural really biases and discrimination and racism so that you can overcome them and say, let's open up to all the people because it's about social justice.
She really said it all. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. She really said it all. I completely and utterly agree with every aspect of that. One, women need to ensure that when you do ascend to a position, that may be the first or the only, that you hold your foot in that door, that you keep that wedge open, and that you pull other women behind you, right? That you ensure that they are coming up the ranks. But I also believe firmly that there is something that's incumbent upon those who are coming up the ranks as well, right? One, that you do so with the requisite amount of humility and with a firm understanding that that means that someone else has sacrificed in order for you to be there, and that she needs for you to do your darndest to show up early, right, stay late, to do what it is that needs to be done. And then two, that you are paying it forward, right? That you are making certain that the person who is to your right or to your left, that woman also has an opportunity. Taking on the ideology of the oppressor is not something that we want to do, right? Women have a tendency to have a different way of managing. I love what you said about the fact that we tend to be more nurturing. I've seen a lot of women in the generation above me that try to manage as men do, right? Which always, I believe, harms us, right? We tend to be naturally inclusive, right? We tend to care about whether or not the project deadline is met and about the project manager doing the project, care about the project manager, right? Make certain that we fulfill these positions with everything that we bring to it, our femininity, our knowledge and background, the lens through which we see the world, and then indeed ensure that you are instructing your teams and identifying young men, right, who understand the importance of elevating women into these spaces as well, mentor them, coach them, sponsor them, right? Because the truth is that we need both genders, right, to see the world in a more equitable way. And if we continue just having conversations in and of ourselves, then we will only be talking to half the populace, right? We need to ensure that we are providing an aspect, an area, a venue for men to be our allies in this. My father would have been a feminist if he ever knew what one was. All he knew was that his daughters deserve a right to become their best and greatest selves. And that's all it is for our brothers in this struggle too.
Well, thank you very much. Brilliant answers. Still in the wake of that, because when I stepped in, we had a couple of questions lined up for you. You've answered some of these questions. I want to talk about the concept of feminism. Every time, feminism, womanism. I saw that brilliant talk you gave, by the way. And Professor, I've also heard you talk about the role of women. When we talk about the role of feminism, it becomes very, very controversial in terms of, we're talking about womanism, women all across the globe, Asian women, white women, black women, and then you realize that in as much as there's a thread that runs through them, they have different needs. This is not a soup, this is a sandwich where you have different ingredients here. I want to ask you, because you both are black women, you've come from different backgrounds. You here have rising through the ranks through, on the continent as well. When you take a look at the woman needs, what is that one central thing that you think runs all through, across all women, the basic needs? We might have differences, but white women, black women, all these women, what one thread do you think runs all through when we take a look at it? Talking about, the feminist view and a womanhood.
First of all, thank you for acknowledging the difference between feminism and womanism. I often say, as a woman of color, I am a womanist. And I am a womanist because so often, right, throughout history, at least in this country, the feminist movement has not been one which has included the issues and the agenda items that are centric to my being. It is important to me that my community is well. It is imperative to me that I know that when my husband leaves for work in the morning, that he's going to return safely, that my son's care is important to me as a woman. It is my wholeness that I bring to it. And so where and when I enter, my entire community enters with me. And that is not something that has been an aspect of the feminist agenda, or else we would have had, right, majority mainstream feminist organizations speaking out on issues pertaining to children of color that have been affected in this country, and they do not often. I think that one of the central themes has honestly been really the need for our voices to be heard. Whether or not you are African, African-American, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latino, whether or not you are white, Italian-American, Irish-American, Italian, or a Spaniard, the issue is that our voices need to be heard, but it is because of the fact that pay equity continues to be a central theme for us around this globe. Women are not paid the same as men for similar or like work, and it continues to be an issue. When we see this in communities where, quite frankly, the women are oftentimes either a single parent, right, or the head of the household, what it means if we do not address this is that we are leaving trillions of dollars off of the table. Our impact on the economy, it would actually be better for the outcome of economic systems if women were literally paid equitably. We've just seen this demonstrated on the world stage as the central theme of the World Cup. Yay, USA. Right? But there's a reason why we are always saying this. No matter where you find these women, you are finding that they are not paid equitably. That, my friend, continues to be a significant problem because it contributes to the facilitation and the permanence of both an underclass, right, and inequity. We must achieve gender parity.
Thank you very much, and also, Ambassador, would love to have your take.
Yeah, thank you. My sister has said it all. For the last 15 years, when I was teaching in the American Academy, my courses were women's agenda. Why women's agenda? Because I believe the struggle that African American women face in the American experiment, because it's still an experiment, is similar to most of the women in Africa. Because the impact of slavery, people believe that it's only felt in the Americas. It's not true. The impact of slavery is still felt in Africa. The impact of colonization is still felt in Africa. 2 days ago, my younger sister sent me a picture of the first ever classroom in Africa during the colonial period, just in 1901. The whole classroom, you find young boys naked, listening to this white person. The whole classroom was male students. So when you look at where inequalities start, in the formal system of our country, it started through colonization by selecting only boys in the classroom. So when you look at from 1901 to today, the number of girls who have access to basic education in comparison to boys, you can still say that the disparity still exists, creating inequality between men and women. Yes, when you look at, for example, the public sector, women earn the same amount of money as men. That's true. But how many women get there in the private? So when you look at the gross budget of the public service, I would say 75% goes to men than women. So we still do not earn the same as men, even if we have the same degree. Because we are not selected to hold power decision positions. And if you do the same degree, you are subaltern to the men that with whom you have been in the same classroom. So the same structures that you find in America operate in slightly different ways in Africa. So I think there is a solidarity to be built between women around the world. One of the challenges of Beijing conference on women was that African women refused to take the whole agenda of Western women because the experiences are different. When you look at religion, when you look at culture, when you look at economics, how we deal with issues that we're facing in our communities, it's totally different. So who determined the agenda for women equality in the world? And I think since the 1990s, the experiences of black women have been felt wholeheartedly in the United Nations. So yes, we want for women equality, but the way we experience it is different, and it has to be recognized.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor and Ishimwe. My question is really built on what you just said about still having a big gap of women leaders in top positions. We still have a very small number. And we know that we don't need to have women in these executive positions by favor. We should be there by competence. We should be competent to really have those positions. And to have that competence, it goes with several things, including building capacity, having confidence and capital. We need to invest. We need to be invested in ourselves. Get quality education. Get capital for our businesses to really flourish. And all of those things need sort of different collective efforts. So I want to hear from you. What do you think, or how do you think women can achieve this? How do you think we can have this? Given your experiences that you've been able to have good education, different opportunities, who do you think is responsible to enable women access, capacity, confidence, and capital of everything that we need to achieve that?
Thank you. I think power is something that is not given. You have to fight to get it. That we have to understand it.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to relinquish power. So in that context, what do we do? I will give you an example of my own country. In the 90s, when the Berlin Wall fell down, the whole countries, developing countries, were looking at how to democratize society. And in my own country, we went also in this process. But who really led the process are two, I think, main constituencies as far as I'm concerned. The student movement, but the women movement. And I have two brothers here. Their other sister, she created a movement of women who are really going to fight for women. They demanded to be on the table with men when the national conference is being held. Even though women struggle a lot to get democracy, they refuse for women to be on the negotiating table. So she organized most of the women, and they demand them to be around the table. So in other words, if you're waiting for men to ask you to come and join, they're not going to do that. Because you're asking them to relinquish power. It's not going to happen. But besides that, I think the law, if you look at the constitution of most of the countries, it says that men and women are equal. But the implementation of this constitutional right is not done. Almost in all countries, except more and more the Scandinavian countries. When you look at my own country, we have the quota laws, which means positive discrimination for women. When you look at the decision-making position, at least 1/4 of the position should be held by women. and they ask the political parties to put women candidates on the ballot. You know what happened? They do put women on the ballot, and women do win on election. But when women win on election, they go sit down and say, oh, who best can represent the party? I have two of my friends. They win in the election, but they were not given the position by their own political party. And they say, oh, women cannot be fighting in the parliament. And they're not available because we have discussion so late in the night, they have to go home. What does it mean? Yeah. Yeah, it is happening. It is happening. So what does it mean? You have to ensure that the laws are enforced. You have to ensure that there is solidarity within the country, but also within the international community, because the international community look at how the implementation of the laws are held in the different countries. So women have to really know that when you fight for women's rights, sometimes it's a lonely place, right? The second, we have to be really cognizant of what is the provision of the laws, so that we can take the provision and fight for the implementation. Because even if it's one quarter, you make progress as you go along. You're not going to have a revolution overnight, but we are going to have the revolution if we are able to enforce the law. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm very sure you'll find a way to answer that as well. But I want to talk about your role as a policymaker. And you both have had that experience, for so many years. Ambassador, Madam Ambassador, you've had that experience. You visited over 30 countries. I did read your bio, by the way. All right, and it's huge. And, and the basis on which you got called as well. And Michellene, you also, worked in the health sector. When you take a look at policies, especially when it affects women, where are we at this moment? And what do you think we need to tweak and get right when it comes to the policy decision? It all begins with the policy stage, from the implementation. You've been in several tables. When you take a look from your experience in health, and I'd also like to get Madam Ambassador's thoughts as well.
Sure. In this country, nearly 80% of healthcare decisions for the family are actually made by the women of the home, right? It is the woman who selects a doctor, a dentist, right, a physical therapist. It's traditionally the woman. Indeed, in the employment of the workforce of healthcare as an industry across the nation and in New Jersey, 73 to 75% of the population are actually comprised of women. But when you look at the hierarchy, right? So who are leading these organizations, these healthcare organizations across the country and across the state? You begin to see fewer and fewer of us, right? So in the hierarchy of the institutions, there are only 15%. So what is concerning is the fact that that means that those who are deciding the systems and structures on how healthcare delivery is administered are majority male. What I have noticed about my wonderful colleagues in the industry is that the men never stopped to ask what it is that they don't know. Who else should be at the table? What else should be included in something? They imagine that the ones in the room are all the ones that they need in order to come up with this new policy. Inevitably, they have left a substantive issue out of the equation. Traditionally, when I'm in the room, I wait. I let them do whatever it is that they are doing, because they love to jump in and talk first. And so they jump in and they do that, and they come up with this formula, and I was like, well, that sounds great, except for the fact that most women are caretakers of the home, and so how do you expect her to be able to get to that location by 7 a.m. if she must drop the children off first? Yeah. So there's a practical aspect of implementation that's traditionally missing. So when I take a look at what policies exist and what's missing there is the issue of equity. is the fact that there's never been the utilization, the implementation of an equity assessment tool for every decision that needs to be made, right? So before you render a policy either institutionally wide, or we treat 3/5 of the New Jersey population, right? So New Jersey is approximately, 9 million people? So think about that, right? So we treat some 5 million people, right? Within that 5 million people, have we gone through the creation of an equity assessment tool that makes certain that we are ensuring that whatever the decision is, whatever change that we make with how we deliver and administer healthcare to them, that we are not negatively impacting the most vulnerable, right? Women, persons of color, persons with disabilities. And the historical answer to that had always been no, until now. So I'm utilizing my position in this role in order to advance the utilization, the adaptation, the adoption of an equity assessment tool, so that we are making certain that everyone's health and well-being is at the center of our policies instead of just the men who have made it up. But simultaneously, we're trying to do the same thing with the state legislature, so that every article of legislation, every bill that gets sent through the legislature goes through a similar assessment tool. So remember what I said earlier about our voices being an issue. That's what I'm talking about. My experience. I am the expert at my lived experience. Nobody knows better about the lived experience of a woman than a woman, but not every woman's experience is the same, right? So what I feel like has been missing is the application of an equity assessment tool that ensures that I am treated equitably. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does.
Thank you. I think I agree totally with my sister. And I think about looking at how really do we bring our voice on the table. My twin sister just came back from Niger. She went into a lab where there is an expert, an engineer, a woman, and that's her lab. But when people come to ask questions, she said to her colleague, "You can respond. You can respond." And my twin sister just got so upset. I said, "Well, that's your lab. Why are we, this male colleague, responding for you?" So sometimes, even if we have the position, we don't know how to use our voice. It's very important, really, to have mentoring and coaching for women. The fact that you are appointed doesn't mean that you are prepared.
Oh, that's so good.
The fact that you are appointed doesn't mean that you are prepared. And you have to be prepared. Coaching and mentoring is fundamental for us. You talk about the humility during your talk. I have to be humble and say, I don't know. How can I do that? When I arrived in Washington, D.C., I spent 1 or 2 months. Then I said, listen, I need to go and check with my sister who has been ambassador for a long time. I went, and she was Deputy Assistant Secretary for Africa, Lisa Williams. I said, my sister, I want to see you. You have been ambassador of the United States in Niger, and now you are Deputy Assistant Secretary for Africa. Tell me what it means to be a good ambassador. Tell me what it means to be really great for my country. And she said, over the last 2 months, where have you been? I said, I attended all the meetings at the State Department. She said, in Washington, D.C.? I said, yes. She said, well, we have 50 states. Have you been to 10? Then she said, my sister, if you want to be effective, you have to do A, B, C, D, up to Z. And you have to check each other. You have to be confident as a woman leader to identify really another woman leader who will guide you, support you. That's fundamental. Men do that over the golf club. Men do that over the bar. But we don't have outlets. When we gather, it's just to have fun. It's nice to have fun, to dance cook and do whatever. But when you are a woman leader, you have to be ready. That's one thing. The second, the example that I will give you is during the crafting of the quota law in Niger. My twin sister and I, again, we went and sat down, listening to women lawyers, NGOs, and others discussing about the quota law. Our constitution said men and women are equal. It means that 50%, 50%. But it has never been applied. So now we're negotiating how women can have access to decision-making positions. And you have women who are saying, no, we have to get our 50%. And you have a voice loud saying, no, we are Muslim women. We don't need 50%. The Quran says we have to follow our husband, our brothers. I was like, oh my God. Have you read the Quran, really? It was a problem. So we asked the woman, which Quran have we been reading? Which Quran have you been reading? And they were adamant. So sometimes it's women against women. We end up with having one quarter because there are women who believe that, no, we should just second men and that's it. So when you look at policy, first of all, you can tell that the lack of education of women can be a hindrance for women's advancement. These women, they didn't know the Quran, they couldn't read Arabic. So the interpretation of the provision that the Quran gives them is through a man who can understand Arabic and who has to relinquish his power so that you can be in. But you are defending because you went to this teacher and you are narrating to us the teaching of a man who is interpreting the Quran in a very patriarchal way. So preparation is fundamental. You have to know the law, but you have to create a system, a network that supports you. That's fundamental.
Thank you so much. I think maybe to wrap up, I have one final question. Especially in the African context, we've got beautiful cultures, and that is what represents us. That is what that is our identity. But we know that our cultures are not necessarily, most of our cultures are not women empowerment sort of friendly at some point. And I want to hear from you, what do you think, or how do you think we can bridge the gap of reaching or achieving women's empowerment while still preserving our cultures? And I want you to also relate that with how we can balance, as women, as we achieve all of these things, all of these big positions, how can we balance our professional life, our family lives, and our personal lives? I want to hear from you, maybe from Michelle.
Let me first start from saying the perception that our cultures are fundamentally relegating women to the back role is not true. When I look at my own context, before colonization, or even during colonization, we have a figure like Sarauni Amangu. Sarauni Amangu means the Queen Mangu. She fought the colonial powers. You have Yenega, she fought also the colonial powers. I can cite you more than 20 women who are really women warriors, who really fought to preserve not only the woman status, but to fight against the invaders. That's one thing. The second, the way we exercise our power might be different from the way Western world, in the Western world, women express their power. I can give you an example. Before coming to the United States in 1988, I was just like you, Thomas Jefferson Fellow. My two sisters and I were selected. But a month before coming to the United States, I was working for the Ministry of Education and UNICEF, looking at really traditional practice of medicine. So we went to this village, and we were with this old woman. She was even blind, but she was the medicine woman in the village. When we arrived, the whole village came under the tree, and the king was there, and all the people were there. Our team of sociologists, linguists, lawyers, we started talking to the king. When he started talking, he said, I cannot talk without having the permission. He said, okay, the king said he needs a permission. Who is he going to get permission from? Since he's the king. But he said, my older sister is sitting. He will not talk to us before his older sister spoke to us. And who was she? That was the medicine woman. At that particular moment, it became clear that he deferred to his older sister to speak, even though he was the king. He recognized the power of his older sister. But we, with our Western lenses, we couldn't understand that. But within the family, when you have a good family relationship, most of the time the men consult the women before coming out. And also in a matrilineal society, it's always the woman who has the decision-making position, but you hear the men speaking. So depending upon which culture we are talking about, I'm not denying patriarchy because it's present, it's pervasive. But the way women exercise power in traditional society is pretty different. But we, because we are using hybridity, because today I cannot say I'm 100% African. We have been influenced by Western culture, and this is part of our history. So how we're using the lenses that we have at the present to interpret the subjugation of women. It exists and they're reclaiming their place. And I would suggest that some of the reading, my two sisters work a lot about women leadership, particularly in the Muslim world. It's interesting to look at how in traditional society, women are reclaiming their voices. And particularly in situations where we think that they don't have the voice, such as Muslim society. So that said, but I look at also in the Western world, because as a hybrid, we have exposed the role of women in Western society, sometimes without even understanding it. And more, because of women's perspective, we are reclaiming really our perception of what is happening in our family. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, we've come to the end of our questions here. And I did get some of your questions as well, and I know we've incorporated some, but the second question you asked is yet to be answered. And we have this one from Nafisatu Hayatuddin from Nigeria. And so for those of you who still have questions, you could just write it on the paper, please, just a line. Let's see what we can do with the minutes we've got, and I'm sure they will be gracious enough to accommodate us. This one here says, I'm just going to read directly. She says, I would like to know from the keynote speakers how a woman can balance her career with her family and social responsibilities without neglecting one for the other. So Michellene, I think you should go.
So I find that interesting. Oftentimes we hear that question posed to executive women in business in this country, and yet I've never heard it posed to a man. Ever. So I will say this, we have our traditions as well. Indeed, the African American culture is still very much patriarchal. take a look at our civil rights movement, the women were always doing everything, but the men were brought in to lead the march. So I understand that inevitably. But I will tell you this. Selecting a life partner who treats you like you are valuable and a partner in this thing called life is incredibly important. Incredibly important. And I say that because of the crux of the question, right? We need to ensure that our partners understand that they too have a role in feeding, bathing, and putting the children to sleep, right? That my career is equal to theirs, that our success together is not one or the other, but yes and, right? That we together can take on the world. And so having an opportunity to truly understand that, despite whatever the traditional culture is around you, in the sanctity of your home, reach that negotiation, right? I don't think you sacrifice your family in order to be civically responsible. I think you bring your family into your civic responsibility. It is your role as mother, you are nation builder. You build it first in your children. Teach them by bringing them with you to the mission field about how it is that we are to care for our country, our continent, and our people. Because then, my friend, they will understand, they will learn best how we are to care for our families, our homes, and themselves. Right? So it's never either or. You are a woman, you can do it all.
Okay, we have a question from, I'm just going to move to him, Fabiso. So here you go, one question, please.
Yes, I always have one. I was troubled when you say we must write because, I don't do writing, I can only speak. Thank you very much to the both of our speakers. I'm so much impressed by all what you said, and I think you all kill it when you say power is such a struggle, and it's too sweet for those who have it to let it go. Hence, equity is always a threat to those who are privileged. I like that phrase. I want to say to you, in my country, most of the structures of governance have a department that is basically dealing with women issues. You can talk government, there's a ministry for women. Perhaps maybe even women issues are based under just a department within the same ministry. But what amuses me is that women never get to lead the same ministry. They are always led by males. So my question to you is, how do you feel about the view, my view that says perhaps we shouldn't have specific structures that basically deal with women issues. Instead, we should mainstream these issues into all ministries, all structures, so that each and every structure is responsible towards ensuring women empowerment. How do you feel about this?
Thank you so much. That's a very good question. I think if you look at the really, in the contemporary world, time, I think I would like to give a hand, big clap for President Kagame, Paul Kagame. Why do I say that? When you look at today, the government of Rwanda, more than 50% of the people holding cabinet are women. So this gender mainstreaming in public policy, he has done it, it's possible. But in most countries, you have a Department of Women Affairs. When you have a woman, most of the time it's a woman. And because there is a woman ministry, they think they have solved the problem of gender equality. And I'm always concerned about that. Because when you do that, it means you are really not for women promotion. You are just trying to satisfy some of the international requirements. The President Paul Kagame showed us not only women can lead, but they can hold the strategic ministries. Women are holding ministries of defense. Women are holding ministry of finance. Women are holding ministry of planning. So unless we go and espouse some of the strategies that we use to equalize government, I think we are just going to continue the same old thing, having a ministry for women and forget about everything. So I think you're right in your assessment.
If I may briefly, under our prior president, we had a policy under President Obama that was healthcare in all policies, which meant that if you were the Department of Transportation, you had to have a health policy. If you were the Department of Human Services, you had a health policy. I do believe firmly that there should be, in fact, a cabinet officer that perhaps is really that person who is the champion for women's issues, but that every single other ministry needs to ensure that they are looking at women's issues in all policies, right? So across the board, there needs to be a strategic framework, perhaps defined by the cabinet officer over women's issues in particular, but then, right, they merely act as the champion to ensure that the Department of Defense, the Department of, or the Ministry of Transportation, and every other in between, that there is the progressive steps required in order to attain equity for women in those particular fields.
Thank you so much. Comrade had a question, which is very similar to actually my personal question as well. For Michellene, at a young age, you started your career leading, a huge number of staff members, and she wants to know, how did you manage at such a young age to manage or to lead your team, even those older than you, as a woman as well?
Yeah. That's so funny. I remember being the CEO of the New Jersey Lottery, and my youngest senior staff member was 20 years my senior. The youngest person had me by 20 years. It was a $2.4 billion corporation, right? So, but only 150 staff. I think two things. One, I wanted to ensure that they understood that I was not confused about our relationship, right? That I all the well understood the hierarchy of the organization. I say that because at one point I was meeting with a senior member, and she began to laugh hysterically, and I looked at her and I said, "What's so funny?" And she said, "You are younger than my daughter." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, if we have a problem with that, there is a remedy." Right? And I merely said that because I wanted to make certain that she understood I was very clear here, right? That my age would not be utilized as an issue in my administering the duties of my office, so it should not be an issue in administering the duties of yours, right? And that my talent had prepared me, and my self-discipline, preparation, and sacrifice for this role, right? So I think two things. One, you want to make certain that those employees that you have, no matter what their age, but especially when they're older than you, that they feel respected, right? That you value and respect their academic success, their on-the-job work success, but also their individual wisdom that life has taught them over time. So I made them members of my kitchen cabinet, right? You want to utilize their wisdom earned over time. You want to pay that the proper respect, right? You want to make certain that they understand that you see this difference, that you admire them for it, right? Don't be flippant about that, right? But also, don't succumb to subservience as a result of it either, right? I can both value you and lead you, right? People love leadership. They don't like management. Those are different things, right? You can win them over as a significant manager when you are also a compassionate, caring, and active listener as a leader.
Oh my God, there's so much wisdom in this room. I don't know about you all, but I'm glad to be a man and be seated here because there's so much to learn. So it's a women's leadership program, but there's obviously a lot to learn from even by the men here. You give us such incredible pearls. There's one more question.
One more. So I have a question that I'm going to ask Husseina to pose.
Okay, so this is in French. So I'm going to read it in French first to be faithful to the, because that's the question of transparency, accountability, and also inclusion of languages and perspectives, right? Où allons-nous si on continue à donner les moyens à la jeune fille d'être plus apte à défendre ses intérêts sans initier le jeune garçon au respect de la femme? Okay? So, where are we heading when we invest more in giving resources to the young girls to defend her interests without initiating the young boys to respect women? So this is a wonderful question which addresses some of the issues that we have addressed in civic engagement, which is as we are promoting women or men, we should not produce gender discordances.
Yes.
And I think during the panel, some aspects of that have been addressed, whereby, for instance, simple example, when black women or African women are saying, don't elevate me while you are putting down the boys and men.
Yes.
So I think we need to if it is not understood, maybe we need an elaboration, Ms. Michelle and Ms. Hassan. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Wonderful question. Again, I believe in yes and, right? Yes. We must invest in our young girls. We must invest in their education. We must provide them access and opportunity. And yes, we must ensure that our young men understand that this is about their future too, that it does not take away from them in order to elevate her, that it is actually for the betterment of their families, their societies, their countries, and the globe. That it is supposed to be the two of them together, right? And that this is what it looks like to value another human being. Yeah. It means that she gets to have a voice, even one that may respectfully disagree. It means that her perspective is valuable because it is the perspective of your daughter. It means that you want for your daughter to do well, even if your cultural expectation may have looked differently in your innermost self. You do, in fact, want a good life for her. And that it begins in how you treat the little girl across from you, next, beside you today. We must teach our young men how it is that they are to interact, respond to, elevate, and encourage, and uplift young women simultaneously, or else you get a Congress full of men that decide the outcome of women's health care, which is what we have in this country. Or else you have the presumption that they can speak for you. And often when I talk about this issue, when I talk about these issues, I walk into a room and I realize that men think that I'm coming in to take something from them. Instead, I ask, how many men in this room are fathers? Any? How many of you are fathers of daughters? How many of you want them to have a happy, well life? That is all this is. And what we know is that it is incumbent upon us to make certain that young men, young boys, right, know what it looks like to truly live in an equitable society, because unfortunately we have not modeled it for them, right? There is a reason why inequity continues to exist. In this country, the colonizers have created a system that encouraged that, right? We could go back over years and I would bring you up to date and make you cry. But the effect, the impact of that is still being felt right now. The good ambassador talked about the impact and effect of slavery earlier. And oftentimes we do that through our lens as persons of colors, but it has affected white Americans just as much. Just as much. It has done damage to the essence of their souls just as much. The same happens when we only, invest in girls, when in fact we do not educate the boys about what this is supposed to look like. We must model it for them because they truly deserve it.
My two sisters said it all. I don't need to add more because that will give the same response. But what I can say, it starts with the family. If the mother and the father do not treat the children the same, the brother is going to think differently about his sister. If the community, the priest, the pastor, do not see women and men as equal participants in the house of worship, it's going to produce the same. If the school do not have gender-based pedagogy, even the female teacher is going to promote patriarchal practices in her classroom. And it goes on and on. But fundamentally, at home, when you are grounded and your father says to you as a girl, yes, you can go and play football, just like your brother. I remember when I was a kid, my cousin did not have a goalkeeper. And they said, well, since you are a young girl, come and play the goalkeeper. And I was so happy to do so. But a neighbor saw me with my small shirt among the boys. He went to my grandfather and he said, Elijah, you see this twin? She's always playing with boys. Now she's playing soccer. My grandfather looked at me and he said, this one, I cannot do anything about her. It's true, you have to leave them alone. What is wrong with playing a soccer? And at that particular moment, I was coming across the veranda where they were sitting. So I just said, oh, Mamari being my husband. I teased my grandfather. He said, come sit down here. So I had my shot. He looked at me up and down. He said, why do you have the shot? I said, well, I was playing soccer. He said, why don't you have like a rapper? I said, you can't play soccer with a rapper. And the man who came to talk to him about my behavior, he said, you see, she responds to me just like the way he likes to respond. But at that particular moment, if my grandfather had said, no, why do you play soccer? It would have stopped me from doing whatever I want to do in sport. So it starts with the family. No matter how the world will view you, if at home you are grounded, you're going to be all right in your life.
I think we're gradually wrapping up, but then again, I know we do have guests here. The girl part, I don't know if they have any question. Do you have any question? The super girls. I beg your pardon. Yeah. A round of applause for them, please. Because we're talking about inclusiveness here, and there's a lot to the left. So I just come over to you and thank you for coming.